Hello, welcome to another edition of the Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 166 for October 4, 2024. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plant and App, joined today by Patrick Anderson, Technical Success Manager for Plant and App, and our wonderful customer group. This is an event we do every Friday, 10 a.m. Central Time, where we get together and talk about low code in general, Plant and App in specific. We get past, help to unblock particular scenarios or just discover and discuss how we can improve the product. But this meeting is open to everyone, all skill levels. Welcome. You are invited to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We put all these out on YouTube immediately after they're completed, and so you can subscribe to that channel, youtube.com/plantandapp. We'll run this agenda. We always start with saying hello, and then we'll go around the campfire on these various topics. We always do first call and anything that was submitted in advance, and then we'll look at some of these other things. But after an hour or so, we'll go into our Afterglow segment, hang around with the recording off, and continue the discussion a little bit. Sometimes that's the best part. So do engage with us. You can just jump in, show and tell. You can share your screen, ask a question, technical or otherwise, and we'll see if we can help. This is the spot where you can submit questions and topics in advance. You can use the QR code or send an email to support@plantandapp.com. And with that, hello all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
I missed you guys.
Welcome back, Don.
Thank you. It was a wonderful trip. And I told a couple hundred people who are Agatha Christie fans all about Planet App. That was very interesting. It was not planned. Kate got a little bit of stage fright going in front of the world experts on Agatha Christie, and she said, "Well, could you be up there and you could tell a little bit about how you did it and how you created the database for her to store all of her glossary terms of her book that she wrote." And I said, "Sure, yeah, I'll help." So I got up there and we switched back and forth. She would talk about the interesting terms, and then it would be my turn, and I would talk about how I created a tool on a website using this cool tool called Planet App. So it was fun.
So remind me or tell the time frame that Agatha Christie wrote was what years?
She wrote over 60 years. Starting, the first book was released in 1920. So, Mysterious Affair at Styles, which incidentally is getting a brand new audio rendition, a big production, audio production, starring Peter Dinklage as Poirot. Anyway, so it's still very much relevant and liked, and her books are, I think I know she's the third best-selling author next to Shakespeare and the Bible in the world. So that's a lot. At any rate, over 100 years that she's been writing, and so these words are a little obscure, and that's the whole idea for Kate writing her book.
Well, and that's kind of my point. It's interesting that something that's fans of something that spanned from 1920s until 1980, which is roughly the beginning of the PC era, sitting and hearing about a database tool that I mean, it's got to be an interesting mix of audience that
Very much so, yeah. Especially if they're sitting in the audience in a 1920s flappers outfit or something, which they were.
Well, good. Well, thanks for helping to promote us.
Of course, yes.
So, anyone come with anything first call that we want to deal with?
I always have something, but if you have a plan, I'd like to go over how to parse a JSON where you don't know what the elements are going to be.
Yeah. That sounds like fun.
because that's what I've got. I've got a an application where we're taking event registration, and the manager, the event manager, creates different attributes, preferences, like what meal would you like to eat, and what classification are you? And those can change. I don't have any control over what the manager is going to ask. So there could be, one or two preferences per attendee, and there could be 10. I don't know. And so I don't know what exactly I'm going to be getting back, but what I have to do is I have to take that reservation where it says, okay, there's an array of attendees, and attendee one is a member, and the entree selection was fish and those kind of things, and list them in a list, and then attendee two, attendee three, and write those all in an email and send them to the client so they know who's ordering what.
Yeah, so PlantinApp can be pretty good with that in low code, and I'm thinking, I mean, if as with anything, there's always at least 7 different ways to do something, right? Um, so we can start on one and explore that a little bit. Um, without objection, I'll dive into that. My light's doing something funky here. I'm just going to turn it off before it confuses the thing. All right, so we are working on parsing a JSON when you don't know the properties that will be returned. And so I'm going to create in my little test world a test for this. Um, you know what? Let's do this as a campfire contribution so that I don't have to redo this later. And I suppose we can take a look at making sure there isn't something that already applies to this, that we already have the answer. Let's see what we got. Convert how this one might be what we want. It is. So, do you happen to have an example of the JSON that you're going to get back on, or would you like me
I
to make
wish I
a test?
did. I just asked for it from the developer. It's a mobile app that's sending this to me via an API call, and I'm dumping it into an entity called JSON response or RSVP response, uh, and then um, uh, and then I'll parse it from there. And he hasn't sent it to me, but the array would be first name equals Joe, last name equals Pete. I mean, equals value, name equals value, like that. Selection equals fish, those kinds of things. So there's a couple of values I am expecting, like there should be a I don't know what you call a token. There will be a key called total, and the value of that will be a dollar amount, and that way I can tell the person how much. I can tell the manager how much the attendee has paid for this order.
Any other known ones?
Uh, those are it. Affiliation, I think, is one of them, and that's where, is this a member?
Sure. So let's get
Uh,
some test data here. Um, and that's enough. Whoops, really, I stopped it and it lost my stuff. Um, So let's try it again. So we don't know, we've got some sample stuff. We don't know what's coming in. In this case, AI just picked it out for us, so we don't know what's coming in. But if we take any one record and put it into the tool that's already here on Campfire, and use the button, what we get out of it is an array of name and value pairs. And putting this into a nice, I'm going to find my find an editor here so that I can display it. So it gave us an array of names and values. So if you were to create a list out of this, you could walk through the names of everything that you, I mean, at each point in the for each loop, you'd have the name and the value. So you'd be able to do something with it, even when you don't know what you're going to get back. Does that make any
Yeah.
sense?
And so you create list from JSON, then
Yes.
for a loop
Yep.
that
So
would, okay. And
so
then
so
you could
let's
do something with the conditions if it's if like the total, you could say if the condition is total, then if the name of it is total, then you can set a token called total, and then that'll be a way of building your the reply that I need to give, where these are the specific things I've been looking for, and I don't know where they are in the order of items coming in.
yeah, and bear in mind again, there's what I heard you ask is you don't really know what's coming in your array, so you're trying to find things that uh, um, okay,
Yes,
so I'm sorry,
that's right.
there
There's multiple attendees. Well, there potentially is multiple attendees, so it could be an array of attendees. It could be one attendee. Um, but the attendee it probably has well, definitely has a first name, last name. That I know that they're always going to have a first name and a last name field. There's probably always going to be an affiliation field, and then after that, I don't know what they're going to have. Then there's a bunch of different ones that potentially might be coming in. So an attendee comes in with a few known values and a few unknown values, and it may be one or it may be a number of attendees. There'll always be one. So those are the parameters that I'm working with.
sure. So the thing I was showing you was I mean it's there's a lot of different ones, and at the end of the day, you're going to need to um, your particular scenario, um, and Mark, you're ahead of me. You're exactly where I'm going next. But when you get your actual file format um, and start processing, you can figure out how to um, there's different techniques that you can employ. So this is one of them. If you flat don't know what's going to be in your JSON object and you want to be able to iterate through it to discover it, this is a technique that you can use, and we can dig more into that, into how this happens. But this contribution is out here: convert JSON to main
Yeah,
value.
this one looks good for figuring out for doing the loop of stuff that is unknown. But the second piece of it is how do you know if there's one or more attendees in the JSON string?
Um, yes. So um, let's just talk generally about parsing JSON, and
Hmm.
let's see what we can do with it. Um, so I'm going to create a test page here that we can just play a little bit. There's as Mark was pointing out, there is an action that turns JSON into tokens, and so that's part of what we can do. And So let's just kind of play with the information that came back from this AI sample data and see what we can do with it. So let's say that we had let's start with just, I'm going to put the JSON that comes back into a large text field. Now I'm using forms because it's very visual. You're going to end up doing an API or a workflow or something with this, but forms will help you visualize what you're doing. So let's say this is the input JSON, and for the initial value, I'm just going to take this whole thing that came back, our sample data, and put it in as the initial value of this. So this is just setting us up for being able to work with this data without having to enter it every time, right? We're going to have the input JSON, and it's going to be pre-populated with some sample test. You could also paste in more data into here, but you see where I'm going. This is just setting us up with a sample. So we can see that this has it starts with a bracket, and it's an array of things. So here's your first one, and then your second one, and your third one. And so we know that we're going to have to do something with this. So what can we do? I am gonna let's just focus on this here. I'm gonna pull it out, and we'll open our form as a new tab so we can jump back and forth easily. And this is our JSON form. And so let's think about what we might want to do with this. We could, let's just start with the simple action, parse JSON into tokens. So we'll end up having a button, but I'm going to add a field that is just, I'll make it be a large text, and I'm going to call it debug. I just or debug output. I just want someplace to be able to put stuff so that we can see what we're getting out of interactively. So we have debug output and input JSON. And these are our two field names. So we'll create a button that says test process. Doesn't matter what we call it, but the action that we want to work with is, and you can start by just typing JSON in the search and see what comes up, so you can see different things that are available to you work with. The one I'm focusing on is parse JSON into tokens. So we have JSON, we're going to parse it. The JSON string that we want to parse is the input JSON, and we're going to put it, we can put this anywhere. I'm going to call it P for parsed. So this is going to create P colon something, and create a lot of, turn all those tokens into P. And we're kind of in a discovery mode. So, but this tells us what we're going to get. So we're going to get the base token name and a property name out of this. And so, but we just in terms of pure discovery, we really don't know yet what that's going to look like. So there's another action in here that is context to JSON object. This is great to discover what's in your context. So we've done something. We've done a little action here to create this base token named P, and now we want to create an output, and I'm going to output it to our debug output, and I'm just going to include, the only prefix that I'm going to include is P. So this is just purely a discovery thing that says, hey, I'm trying to think about, I want to understand what just happened here. So take all the P stuff and put it into, show me what got created as a result of this. let's see what happens here. I'm going to follow this with an Ajax, update form Ajax, so that all the changes we just did go back to the form. Let's see if this works and makes any sense. So we have our input JSON, we have our test process button, we click it, and now we get a whole lot of stuff as a result. And this isn't very visually appealing, so I'm going to bring it up here so that we can see what we got. So nicely formatting the JSON. This action created a whole lot of tokens for us, and so P0 first name is John. So it's split out. So you can see record 0, record 1, record 2, and the values. So it's created, for example, P0 last name is Doe versus P1 last name is Smith.
Yes.
And so so if we had a way of knowing how many things were in here and being able to iterate 1, 2, 3, you could just work directly with the tokens that got created. And so I'm just going to pick one for an example here of what that might look like. If so back to our test process button, instead of this discovery thing we just did, I'm going to false this out and instead just take a value from what we learned and do a create update tokens. I'm going to put it up here, and the token that we're going to do is our debug output, and we're going to set it to the value P0 email. So this is just demonstrating that once you have that stuff in your context, once this parse JSON into tokens is done, that you can do stuff with it. So now we're going to get a different debug output. It's just going to be the email of that first user. They're just created as tokens.
Right.
Does this make sense to you so far?
Yes, it does.
All right. So now the question is, how do we iterate through what we got back? So let's look again at parsed JSON and tokens. And does anyone know? I'm not sure that there's a way to know how many elements were created. There isn't a count returned by this.
I'm not aware of that.
So I think, so for example, with this kind of data, you could create a loop that starts at 0 and goes until it doesn't find any data, right? So you could, if you know, for example, that it's always going to have a total, we could, so that every record must have a total. Is that a reasonable rule for your case?
Actually, well, that's an interesting point. No, I think that the total is going to be outside of the array. So the JSON is an order. The order will have an order total. I don't think it has anything other besides that. And then it will have after that an array of people and their preferences. So total will be outside of the array. So it would be like P total.
Mm-hmm.
And then P0, and then John and Pete and all that.
Well, so this is where having the actual JSON that you're going to get back, or a sample of it, is key, because you can.
Right.
So we can talk in terms of technique, but until you.
Yes. Oh, I agree. Yeah, and that's what I'm looking for is technique. For instance, this idea of converting to object so that I can see what came out, that's tremendous. I didn't know that there was that, and that was where I was struggling with what do these tokens look like? if I convert them. And now I see that there's a way to see what they look like so that I can call them. So that's a big deal.
I was thinking, Dale, as you were using that, the take the context and put it into JSON. What did we? You use that almost on every single call now, and just a few months ago we didn't have it. And what did we do before it? It's one of those things. It's a pretty cool thing, and Dale is responsible for that being there. So just wanted to
Yes, big
plug
kudos.
that in.
Right, exactly.
It's
So
a very, very useful thing.
Well, yeah, yes, I agree it's a useful thing. And then the fact that the reverse, I mean, it starts to get into interesting concepts, but the fact that our create update tokens has this feature kind of allows the reverse, that you can
Yeah.
put a token in so you can push things in and out of context without actually knowing in advance what they are. So it is two sides of the same coin, very powerful. All right,
Right.
let's see if now I've gotten it to change things around here a little bit. And so let's see if this JSON makes sense. So we're getting back an object that is an order, and then there are participants that have these characteristics. And so
Yes.
in this case, there've got three. So this sounds more like your case. And so let's go back to our work in progress and see if we can better parse this. So, I mean, we're just focusing closer to your case. So I'm going to paste that as our sample JSON or input JSON. And in our processing, I'm going to go back to, we're still going to parse that, and we're still going to parse it into P. Let's go back to turning our debug output to being, let's reveal what got created. So we're going to, and then let's turn this create update tokens off so that we can just see what comes in as a result of this. Because now you're going to see kind of this multiple level thing and how this looks. So let's test that, and we get a lot of stuff. But again, you want to put it into something that displays the JSON. So now you're getting only 3 things came out of it. It's going to require additional parsing, but you're getting the order, the total, and the participants. It doesn't expand all the tokens all the way out, or else it could be huge. But you can go on to expand the rest of them. So looking, so I don't know if I can do this side by side here. We had an order element, and this is expanding the first level. So order and total, and then participants. Order, total, and participants.
Right.
So now you can get your total. So right off the bat, this token, p order.total, will give you your total.
And then I can do the convert objects on p order participants, right?
Yeah. So now this would be the next one, p order participants.
That makes a lot of sense.
So now we go into our test process button, and it's another, we can just clone this. It's another parse JSON into tokens. So we have some more JSON that we want to parse. It's p order participants, and I'm going to put this into Q. I'm just using another letter. This can be a long name. Let's do for people, because I want to do it something other than P, right? So that we can focus on that for a minute. So in our context to JSON, if the prefix that we're going to do now, instead of, let's say in addition to P, we'll also get the people. So this is telling us our debug output can include both of those things. And so now let's run that and take a look at it. So we still have our P things being revealed, but now the people, this is that inner thing that we're talking about. This is enough for you to do if you want to do a loop.
Right.
So we don't know. There could be 0, 1, 2. We don't know how many people are going to be in there. So let's say that our rule is going to be if there is a last name that so long as there's a last name, then there's a valid row. I guess
okay. I know that there will be at least one, but yeah, it's actually a good exercise.
Let's make this be more resilient. The people 0, the item without any dots will be will always be the JSON of that entire thing. So we can go until we run out of when the people 3 is blank, then that means that we don't have any more people.
Okay.
All right. So now the parsing on that, again, we've parsed the first level, we've parsed the second level. This is just purely to reveal things. So we've learned what we needed. We can turn this off for now. We have this other thing that we no longer need. So that was just an example. So now right in here, let's add, and I'm going to do it as a execute actions. Nope. Let's do a what's the action?
Do you want the for each? Is that
I'm trying to set up a repeat. That's what I'm doing.
Yes. Okay.
So we have a repeat action, and the idea here is that this is just going to keep going until something becomes false. So we're going to go while the row has data. That's our guideline. And so this is going to put it into position here, and so I'll describe this. This is our description. We're going to do this until we run out of the people. This is when you're using this particular tool, there's a thing called a base name token, and you have to provide a name here. I'm going to call it loop. It doesn't matter what you call it, but you have to put something here, and that it's going to give us loop colon current loop number, which is important to us, right? We're going to start at 0 and go up. This is the thing that's going to give us 0 and then 1 and then 2, and so this is the base token name that you're going to need. Let's assume that the worst case is that there's going to be 99 people. You can adjust this number, but putting in a number of repetitions is a good practice to prevent a forever loop.
Runaway.
A runaway, correct.
Yeah.
So if there's probably going to be 2, 3, or 5 people,
right?
By saying 99, it's just going to say, well, okay, if we get our while condition wrong, it will keep it from just going forever. The while condition is going to be, again, we're looking at, we're going to get the people 0 and then 1 and then 2. So we're going to be looking at this row and saying, we're going to replace
colon.
0 here in a minute with something dynamic, but we're
Mhm.
so long as this is not equal to
Blank.
blank,
Yeah. Right.
that we want to continue. And so
Got it. I'm following what you're doing. Yep.
all right.
And you're
So
going to
now
put
let's
in current
replace
loop number right now.
correct. So now we're going to
Got it.
do instead we're going to do loop colon current loop number as a variable.
Cool.
So now this is just going to go, hopefully it'll do 0, 1, 2, and then it'll be done at 3. And then for our actions, I am going to create and update a token, and I'm just going to continually update our debug output. Where is that? Debug output to be the whatever the current value of debug output is already, and then I'm going to put a comma, or I'll go to a new line here, and I'm going to just output some stuff. So I'm going to add on the current loop number, and let's go ahead and grab the last name of the person in that loop number. So that the last name of that person would be something in this format, right? We just need to replace the 0 with the current loop number as well. So that here. It's hard to read that there. So we're pulling out of the people using 0 the first time, and then 1, and then 2, whatever loop we're in. And because this is, we need to increase the recursion number here.
Right.
Because we want it to do it. We have multiple recursions happening. So, and Mark is hitting me on the chat that there are other techniques, and we could loop through these things, and that would be another way to handle this. But yeah, like I said, there's 7 different ways. I'm picking
right
today. So what this should do then is continually add to debug output with the content of what we found, the people, and until it's done. So if I didn't get a runaway, it's going to repeat, and then it's going to update the form, and then done. So, and this is a good exercise, because this is a common question. How do I process JSON? So let's do that. Let's run it, and we got nothing. So that's fun. So presumably my my while was wrong. So let's this while condition is not doing what I'm thinking it is. So instead, I'm going to change this.
Is there a quote in there?
Well, yes, there is. See? Hey, Matt.
There you go.
So let's see if that's better. 1 Smith, 2 Johnson. So it's this loop apparently starts, this repeat starts.
I was wondering, yeah, because we don't, I was asking, I'm going to ask that question earlier, but it doesn't explicitly say that it's 0 based. And often when we do, in our help instructions, when it is 0 based, we explicitly state it. So I guess it's not.
So,
okay. To kind of keep our sanity, let's, assumes we have some, but let's create a token that is the index that we want. So we really want to subtract 1 from this. Let's call it index, and it's going to be based on this is a pro.
Sure.
I'm going to come back to this in just a second. So we're going to create an index. It's going to be based on the current loop number. What we really want to do is subtract one. And so how do we know how to subtract one? If we go to configuration and look for, in our tokens, there's a token called do math.
Oh, yeah.
And here's the structure of do math. So what we want to do is, here's our expression, here's the format of it, and so we want to actually, what we want is this loop number minus one. Loop number minus one is, so now index is going to start out being 0 and then 1 and then 2. So even though our loop is 1 and 2 and 3, the index is going to be 0 and 1 and 2. So this gives us the thing that we need to get to our other things. And so now instead of using loop, showing loop number, we're going to show index, and we're going to base our retrieval on index.
Yeah.
And now what we have to do is clean up that we are this while condition is based on the loop number, and that's not, we need it to be based on the index. So I'm going to show you how to get around that. We're going to create index before we get started. And so index is going to be 0. And so in our repeat, we can now change this to be based on index. So now the first time through, this reads 0. And then this is setting index. So this will maintain it as each loop goes through. Now, am I close to?
Yep, that's it.
All right. So let's try again. Now we're getting 0 Doe, 1 Smith, 2 Johnson, and then we're still getting an output for 3 because it's done that. We should probably figure out the logic to keep us from getting that 3 output. But we are getting to the things that we needed. So in the middle of that loop, you could then be, I mean, we demonstrated how to get to last name, but you could get to any of the other things for that item. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. The values, the names of these, the other technique that we did originally, which was converting them to name value pairs, then I could just put them out as name value pairs. Now I need to know what the names are, or I need to incorporate the name value pair concept into the loop as well.
Right. But bear in mind that
you've got them there.
The people 0 would be a JSON array or a JSON object of the person. So if you used that other technique
for that one, exactly,
to that particular piece, then you could then create a list of those and iterate through them.
Right, and that's probably the way to do that one is the repeat loop with with whatever the technique is in that Campfire contribution for getting it into name value pairs.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Yes, that's
All right.
exactly what I
So,
need. And
kind of summing up, um, when I'm faced with these things, if I have this JSON, which is so very common, I don't know what's in there, but I got to do something with it. Or rather, let's start with a simple one. It's defined, and so wherever it's coming from, it's going to be the same every time. As soon as you have a sample of that, you can start using tools like Parse JSON into tokens to see what you might have to reveal 2 or even 3 levels, just depending on the complexity of what they send you, but understanding what they send you and then expanding the next level and working with it and expanding the next level and working with it.
right. And the convert to tokens and this technique of displaying the end result, I don't know how you do it without it.
Yes,
So that's the big help for me today. Thank you very much. That was great.
absolutely. Um, I want to point out just a reminder slash warning about parse JSON into tokens, and that is that when you parse JSON into tokens, it creates all of the elements, right? Um, whatever you're doing, it creates it. If the JSON, if you're doing something that's iterating, um, and the JSON that you have is variable. So let's say that if phone number wasn't, if a particular person doesn't have a phone number, and so there's not a phone number property in the JSON.
Hmm.
Yeah, um, let's go back to our. So the scenario I'm talking about is you've got John Doe and he's got a phone number, and then you get to Jane Smith, or yeah, Jane Smith, and if you get this, it's no problem. When you parse JSON into tokens with this, phone number will be set to blank. But if your provider, wherever this is coming from, gives you this with no phone number, when you parse this second row into JSON, because it doesn't clear out the people, it uh, or whatever it just whatever's here, it creates those tokens. And so you can get into a situation where Jane Smith looks like she's got John Doe's phone number because phone number
Oh,
gets phone number gets created, but not. Um, yeah. So just
okay.
be aware of this quirk of parts JSON into tokens. There's
Well, that's a good thing to catch with the guys that are developing it is that if there's people that are, or if the person is not filling in all of the blanks,
send them anyway.
send them blank. Yeah, send me blanks, but don't ignore the the key if there's no value. Got it.
Correct. All right. So we have it feels like we've answered your question, and I have
Oh
something
yes.
related here that I wanted to mention to you. It's kind of, um, well, let's see what else we have. Um, yeah, so I'm going to close all the rest of that down. And um, recently I used the same technique of discovering what's in context to realize that there's something that I learned something that I didn't know. I wanted to make sure that we kind of get this out there as a feature of the product. So I created a workflow, and it's a very simple workflow. It takes no inputs, it does no processing, but it provides 3 outputs. And I'm putting output 1, output 2 is a date time, and output 3 is a new GUID. It doesn't matter what they are. I'm just producing 3 outputs. And so when I run this thing, I get these 3 different things. All right. I have another workflow that is going to call the first workflow. And so let me find that one. It's called workflow show context. So what I did is I called that first workflow, and you see it's calling, it's execute the workflow output test. It's going to get our 3 outputs. But notice I'm not putting anything in the outputs. I'm now using this same discovery tool, context to JSON object, and saying, give me everything and put it into a result called tokens. And then the output of this is tokens. I'm just going to take tokens and run it. And so what surprised me is that our default is whatever comes back from a workflow output always gets put into your context. So output 1 got created even though we didn't wire anything to it. So we got let's look again at our process and maybe change it a little bit. If I put output 1 to X and output 2 to Y and don't put anything to output 3, you're going to see a slight difference. So when we run this, we now have X is A, Y is the date, and output 3, because we didn't wire it to anything, goes to output 3. Whatever outputs of a workflow that you execute always gets put into your context. Now, this this was unexpected to me, and when I talked with Patrick, he said, "Oh yeah, that's the way it works." So this may not be surprising to any of you, but it was one of those moments for me. It's like, wow, I assumed that if I didn't wire anything to this, if I didn't provide values for them, they just weren't happening. That the workflow executed, but the outputs that I don't care about didn't impact me. But that is not correct. Outputs of workflows always get injected into your current context.
No.
I'm
And
happy to see that, Dale. That demonstration. Was that a ghost story?
it could be for somebody. From if you want to put the most positive spin on this, it's saving you the work. If you know this characteristic of running workflows, I mean, you've seen me in many demonstrations putting, I would do this. Take output 1 and wire it to output 1 explicitly so that I knew where it goes. If you know this behavior, you can save that work, and you just know that outputs go to whatever the name that the workflow you're calling creates. But if you don't know that, and
So was it something totally unrelated that led you to test this out?
yes.
Is this a random discovery? Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was. I was doing something else. I was looking for something else, and did this. I was doing this discovery for a different reason, and all of a sudden realized that I'm getting content that I didn't expect in my context.
Mhm.
So the fact that we have the action to reveal what's in the context lets me now see that the behavior of this thing. So on the positive spin side, you don't have to provide these values, you just get them back. On the potential negative, or the thing that you want to guard against, is that if the workflow you're calling happens to return something that a token that you didn't realize that it had this behavior, you would have a change to a token or that you weren't expecting. So let's just take a silly case. If the workflow you're calling is returning X, and you're using X as a looping variable in your primary workflow, now as soon as you call this, the other workflow, X gets a new value coming from somewhere else. And so it might be the creation of a ghost story. You're doing a loop X is 1, 2, 3, 4. You're adding to it all the time. And now if you also use X in the other workflow to do a loop and then a different loop and return it for some reason as a output, you're going to be impacting. So just be aware that outputs come into your context.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Dale.
Absolutely. And yeah, good news is it's easier, right? If you're just using those, you don't have, you can count on them being put there. You don't have to rename them. You can just use them as blanks. I like to be explicit, but you can count on them if you want to. We've talked about versions. We're still in version 126, and I thought it was interesting to me to see where people are with this. Most people are on 125, at least in our recent versions. So, and I'm just kind of watching the adoption of version 126 and hoping that it comes up. But this feature that we were just talking about, the context thing, that happened in 125. So is that true or 126? I don't know. I think it was available in late 125.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyways, some of the things, if you're not seeing what I was just, if you're watching this video later and you're not seeing what I was talking about, it's that you got to get on 125, 126.
Yeah, I think we had a hot fix in late 125. Yep.
Thank you. We are still working furiously to try to come out with the new version 1.27. We're probably still a month out from that, so that's where we are.
And 127 is going to be compatible with the latest DNN 9.13.
Yes, we are testing it against 9.13.
13.3, I think.
13.3.
Yeah.
And
fantastic.
As you pointed out, or others have before, that we're seeing that it runs just fine. The 126 is running just fine under 9.13. We just, from our recommendations, we like to test fully against a particular version. So if you absolutely need 9.13, you should do that. We're not aware of anything negative. Mentioned last time that we're going to be presenting at DNN Summit. I have more to say about that, but I'll save that for next week because we kind of hit the end. But we got time for last words or short questions. Okay, we will, as promised, go into Afterglow here in just a minute, where we will stop the recording and hang out for a few more minutes. But thanks for spending your hour with us, and we'll do it again next week. See you then.